welcome everyone who's joined
Very
us
nice.
to Town Hall 118. It's Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. And we're going to get this show on the road. So let's move along here. For those of you that don't know me, my name's John Best. I am the CEO and co-founder of Best Innovation Group. I have a long history in credit unions, been working with them since the 90s. And we started big to really help folks sort of navigate all the technology and services that really are so intertwined in today's world. And we help a lot of folks do that. Lately, we've been doing mergers. We've been doing AI strategies. So hit us up. Go to www.big-fintech.com. Speaking of AI, you know one thing AI will never replace? I'll tell you though, it's never going to replace Mike Lawson because he's irreplaceable. He can't be replaced because his show and what he does is so important to the industry. And if you haven't been out there to check out what Mike's up to, you're missing out. That's where you can find all the latest. You'll hear from the leaders in this credit union community. You'll hear from the latest movers and shakers. I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he produces it. Maybe he does. Maybe he is an AI already. I don't know. He kind of has a cool jacket on. Is that like a vest? I do like the vest. Very Colorado.
It's a vest. Yes,
yeah,
it's Colorado.
Vests are awesome. I love vests.
Although I'm in Michigan.
Feels very Back to the Future, you know. But that's the two of us. Mike, you want to add anything to that?
I interviewed that gentleman, Scott Mills, right below us there. So he was on the show
Scott
recently.
Mills?
So thanks for that, Scott.
Wow. Did you, how did that go? Did he speak English most of the time or?
Most of the time he did, yes. Most of the time.
See,
yeah. I had to hire a translator for the other part of it. See.
Oh my gosh. Did you see last week's or the last episode of this where I brought ChatGPT on and we did a conversation with someone who was on the Zoom in Spanish and had ChatGPT, translate between the two of us?
Oh, no way.
Oh, it was awesome. You should go back and watch it. It was phenomenal.
Oh, I will definitely.
I couldn't believe how well it worked. I'm still blown away by the 4 Omni, which we'll get to here in a minute. But all right, well, let's keep on. Oh, it was Cynthia. Yeah, Albert remembers. It was awesome. I was really surprised at how, and it wasn't like I planned it. I just did it. Well, you know me, so you know it wasn't planned. Anything can happen on the town hall. Anyways, speaking of anything can happen, you know where anything can happen, Mike? Mostly good anything.
What's that?
At CUNA councils, America's Credit Union councils, those sorts of places. That's where the good stuff happens. And by good stuff, I mean the most important feature of the credit union industry is its community. It's the collaborative community that's been there since the day I walked through the door. I remember being sent right out to Patelco when I first joined GTE, and they welcomed me with open arms, gave me a room to sit in. Of course, apparently Callahan was too cheap to pay for air conditioning. So we had all the windows open. I remember we had all these little fly things hanging down that would catch all the flies in San Francisco because it was right off Market. That was down when they were towards the monster thing. But either way, I was welcomed. I got to meet a lot of people in the industry, and that continues today. And I believe a lot of that community is facilitated by the CUNA councils. They have a council for everything. They have a council for lending. They have a council for marketing. They have a council for tech and ops. You name it, they got a council for it. And not only will you get sort of inspiring, and there's a phone blinking around here somewhere, but I can't find it. Not only will you get inspiring sort of, speeches from folks and different keynotes and things, but you'll also have time to meet with other people and to mix and to learn. Most importantly, what you'll learn is that a lot of people have solutions to problems that you have, and you probably have solutions to problems that they have. And that is the magic. It's magic, Mike. Hey, get it? Magic Mike. Keep your vest on though. But yeah, that's
lovely. Yes,
that's the magic of the credit union councils. Moving along, Illuma. So we're going to talk a bit about Illuma today. I don't know if Milan's on. I asked my team to invite him, because what we're going to talk about today I thought was curious, and I'm interested in Milan's take. But if you're working with if you're working with your call center and you take more than 3, 4, 5 minutes to validate somebody, if you're on the phone with them asking them about, I don't know, passwords and what the last thing they bought was, and that is not the way to run the railroad anymore. this voice technology is really going to important. It's going to be more important after you hear what I have to say today. So if you haven't checked into it, I definitely would. And I just discovered something interesting. I don't know if you knew this, and Scott, maybe you did, but I'm working. Oh, he's there with you. Okay. Is he in the room with you? Is he behind you? Because I saw him walk by, I think.
No.
But what I learned was, now see, I've lost my track because you sent me a chat. What was interesting about the approach that they had in Israel is, did you know that if you sign up, and what I did was I looked at a member app for Israel. So I was looking at a product that they use to sign up people for a bank in Israel. It's a member boarding application, which is really, really cool, called Esh. And they had a voice verification. They have, and I said, oh, that's cool. So is that for like the system you use? And they said, no, that is the law of the land in Israel. Apparently, if you're going to sign up for services, you have to do a biometric voice authentication. I don't know where it talks to. I plan on asking them. I don't know if there's some Israeli database, national database of voice verifications, but given, their situation, it doesn't seem, completely out of the realm of reason. But I was really surprised, and so maybe that's a world that we're going to head to at some point. We've already seen real ID. So, anyways, you can take that time it takes to authenticate someone on a call center down to like seconds if you work with this, and it could probably even go faster if we pre-authenticated the new members coming in so that the system didn't have to learn. One of the beauties of the system is you don't have to go through and sign everybody up. It sort of learns who they are as time goes on, and after a while you can stop asking for any voice authentication or for any second factor or whatever it takes to do that. But going forward, if you could sort of enroll them in the enrollment process of the credit union, kind of like what Esh is doing, you could start right off at that point, which I think may be an important point going forward. Speaking of important points, have you heard of Typhone? How many of you have heard of Typhone? Mike, don't look at me like that. Scott says he has. Mike's just staring at me. It's weirding me out. Typhone has recently
my internet connection's horrible. My Wi-Fi is awful.
Typhone has really rethought their approach to digital. And I was super impressed with it. I'm so glad that they're part of our group here. As a matter of fact, I'm hoping soon to get their AI expert on here. He formerly worked at Microsoft. He worked at Meta. And, they're rethinking everything from a whole different direction. They're throwing out all the original thinking of, screens and how things are going about it. And they're just redoing everything. One of the things I really love is their payment platform. I was thinking about this the other day, and they kind of got this figured out. I was very impressed. So you have something like the postal annex down in your place, Mike. You know what that is? Or since Mike can't interact with me, I'll go with Scott. Scott, you know what the postal annex is, right? So what's the purpose of the postal annex, Scott? He's going to have to unmute.
Are you talking about what I think of as a branch? The
No,
postal
well,
annex, or are you thinking about
I'm talking
the
about,
center
like,
where they sort it?
It's a brand. So it's a brand. It's like the old before it became FedEx thing. What was the name of it? The guy sold it to him. Quickie, something like that. It's where you take a package to send it if you don't go to the post office. So
Right.
Kinko's. Thank you, Mike. Yeah. So for my money, the purpose of that is, do you know how many different options there are to send a package? There are a zillion of them. And what I love about this place, it's right down the street. It's where I have my P.O. box. I can just drive over there, take anything, and I hand it to them. They figure out what kind of box it goes in. They ask me a few questions about it, whether it needs to be insured or whatever. They ask me when it needs to get there, and they keep track of all the people I send stuff to. And they go, okay, so how fast do you want it to get there? How much insurance do you want to put on it? And these sorts of questions. And they take care of the rest. And I don't care whether it goes FedEx, UPS, slow boat from China, if it's cheap and doing what I need it to do. But I think what Typhone has developed, because think about it, we have RTP, now we have FedNow, we have ACH, we have same day ACH, we have Zelle. You could throw Venmo and some of these others in there, which are really ACH. There's too many options for the consumer, for the member. And what Typhone has come up with, which I think is brilliant as a starting point, is basically the postal annex for payments or transfers. And so it figures out, and then it helps you figure that out, because we can't expect consumers to understand the details and the intricacies of FedNow versus RTP versus who knows what all that stuff is. Even the names sound weird. We know them because we work in this industry. So if you haven't checked out Typhone, go check them out, because this is important. This is important to our future, because people will not keep money in your credit union if they can't figure out how to transfer it in and out. And Mike, you can write that down. You can write that too. Yes, sir.
A little public service announcement. I put it in the chat. Maybe everybody's heard about it, but informed delivery is a service by the U.S. Postal Service. If you're concerned about mail not getting to you,
Yeah.
they scan it and they send you an email every day of what you should expect. And I think the overall service of postal delivery is a lot worse than it used to be. So I think it's kind of nice. There's no cost to it. And with the idea of check fraud being a really big concern these days, one of the places people get those checks is in the mail. So if it looks like somebody sent you a check for graduation, they might just pull it out at the mailbox and do something with it. But if you had a picture of it delivered to you via email, you'd know that it was coming or supposed to be.
You know, that's a great point, and I'll take it a step further. One of the big fraud types I'm seeing right now are somehow they're getting the cards that are being mailed out to the members ahead of time and activating them. And because they can spoof the numbers now. That's how it used to be, is that the activation would say to call from this number, and they can easily spoof that now. And that's been a big fraud situation. And there's a ton of people going through that situation because there's so many mergers, which is causing so many reissues. So yeah, that might be something to encourage your members if you're going through a merger, or the merging members, to set up, Scott. That's a great idea, because then at least they would know when to get it. Plus, remember that the PIN is sent separately. And that's another issue that we're running into, is that they're hanging on to the one and then they get the PIN on the other. So way to go, man. See, Mike, he's got it, man. I knew he had this. All right, well, let's move on. We'll keep rolling here because I want to get to today's topic. And today's topic is not the Innovation Club, but that's our recent meeting we had just out in Connecta Credit Union. It was fantastic. It went so well. We really just enjoyed having everybody there. If you're interested, we have a lot of good stuff coming up with this. We're getting ready to talk a whole bunch about AI strategies and what's going on there. We actually went into some quantum strategies here. Lots of credit unions, lots of folks. It's one of those moments where that community that I mentioned ties in. We actually do a big roundtable where we go around and we try to get everybody to talk about what they're working on so that others can hear that and help them or learn from them. And it's just been a great experience. And we're very proud to have it sponsored by William Mills and his group. So come in, check it out, and we'll definitely get with you and talk about it. By the way, if you come and sign up now, you can come to one of the meetings for free. Today's giveaway is a Spotify card for God, how much music can you buy for 99 bucks? I bet you get a ton. That's like 99 songs, isn't it? I mean, not if you get the good ones. You can't, if you're like an audiophile, is it audiophile? I think that's what they call them. If you're one of those dudes that has to have everything in super high def and every audio file you download is 192 meg, then you might get 4 of them out of this. But if you're a normal listener, that's probably pretty good for at least 10 months, 12 months of the service. So make sure you get your names into the chat. If your name is not in the chat, then you won't get on the wheel of spin. If you're not on the wheel of spin, then you cannot earn it. If it is that you are a vendor, don't put your name in. But if you're not a vendor, put your name in, and we'll be doing the wheel before the end of this episode here. And it's sponsored by, as I mentioned, William Mills Agency. So thank you, Scott, for bringing this to us. And we love to give away this stuff. So, all right, let's keep on going. All right, so we're going to talk about misinformation and fraud. So I was looking into a lot of stuff recently, and it's become very, very apparent very quickly, particularly with the elections that are happening around the world, that to no one's surprise, AI is being used sort of in these social media misinformation services and whatnot. But what was interesting to me was this article, and I don't know if we have a slide for it, if I need to pull it up. Melissa or Madison, you can let me know. But there was this article, and it was this person who was a high school principal. And so the high school principal, and I'm going to actually, Madison, if you want to pull it up, actually, I'll pull it up. I'm going to share my screen and pull it up. So hang on. So this article was about this high school principal that basically lost his job, and the poor guy, he wound up, his voice was deep faked, and what they did was they deep faked a recording of him using racial slurs and various things. So they immediately pulled him from his job. He was moved as the high school principal, and then they began investigating it. Now, my first thought was, this is exactly what I thought would happen. These tools are so easy to use, and why aren't high schoolers? This is I mean, I'm not saying I would ever do anything like this, but it's certainly, when I was in high school, something I would consider. I just would never do anything that harmful. I might send a message out, maybe he's talking about how he likes burritos or something more harmless. But that's how high school kids think, and they have access to all these tools as well. So that was my first thought, that this poor guy was hit by one of the kids, maybe somebody who didn't like it. So it was a Maryland high school. Well, they started looking into it, and they realized that it wasn't any of the kids. Turns out it was retaliatory from the athletic director, who had been reprimanded about his work performance and his misuse of school funds. So it turned out it was basically one of the coaches. But this guy got angry phone calls to his house. They had to have the police guard this guy's house. They had to have, you got like his social media, he just had to take it down because it was just inundated with horrible things. But then the police got involved, and fortunately, these things aren't good enough yet that you can't tell through some scientific calculation or analysis with tools that their voice has been cloned. And so once they looked at that, they realized that his voice had been cloned. And if you think about it, and I'm a great example of this, there's so much of my voice out there. You could clone me and never see me again. As far as you know, me talking right now is cloned. And a lot of us are that way, particularly folks who are in a management level within their organization, who are asked to speak increasingly in digital forums like Zoom, where they're being recorded and retransmitted out to the staff for those who couldn't make it. There is a ton of leadership voice and other things out there. So this data is out there. So it wasn't hard for whoever pulled this together to go find recordings of the principal. If you think about it, all they really have to do is just wait around every morning, stand near the speaker when they do the announcements with their phone turned on. And, I'm imagining the principal is the kind of person that probably looks like he was, that would get on there on a regular basis and say something, or go out and find them on YouTube. So why is the audio so concerning? Well, there's a couple things about the audio that I found interesting. One, and I'm gonna show you by I've shown this before, but I'm not sure everybody saw it. So I'm going to show it one more time. So this is called Hey Jen. And by the way, this has really good audio faking. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen real fast and share it again, because Zoom does not turn on these two options like they should, which drives me nuts. All right, so back to it. Okay, so we're in here. You should be able to see my screen. I recently got the pleasure of speaking at Synergy at Credium for my friend Randy Stolp, the new CEO of that place. And I kicked it off with this. So Scott, you can help me. please respond to the knock knock joke when you hear it, because then it makes it less silly. Okay.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Best. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Boo. Don't cry. AI isn't going to take over the world.
So, but if you listen to that, I mean, that sounds.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Best. Knock, knock. Boo. Don't cry. AI isn't going to take over the world.
Do you know how much video I had to upload to make that happen? Less than 2 minutes. That's all I put in. So, but the difference here and why the audio is so important, and this is what was interesting to me, is if you didn't see this, if I played this, but you didn't get to see this video, I think it's more believable because the AI is not, the voice can be kind of a little different. You don't get the facial clues, you don't get the tics, you don't get the various things. So you can tell this is AI, but that's today. 3 months or 6 months ago, this wasn't possible. And now it is. So what's going to happen in a year, right? So the curious thing about this is how many people on this call have received in the past month or so an AI call that was clearly from an LLM? I've gotten at least 10. Who else is? You can just respond by putting in the chat a 1. And if you want to talk about what you got, I'd love to hear about it. Anybody? Yeah, you know what, Scott? You're right. A lot of people don't know, but let's have Ms. Markle talk about it. I don't answer my phone anymore. Smart. Lisa, can you unmute real fast? Where's she at?
Sure.
So what was your call?
I guess I've received a few over time. I don't really recall what they are because as soon as I recognize it, I hang up. But generally, they don't respond in a way that I would expect to what I have to say.
Yeah, and what I find, what's been cluing me in is that little second it takes when you pick up the phone. It's just a little off. And that second that it takes is enough to sort of figure it out, but it is way better than anything I've heard before. And so what's to keep me from cloning, say, Scott's voice or the CEO of the Crayons voice or somebody and calling in to the credit union or calling a bunch of members, people of the credit union and saying, my personal friend, Mike Lawson's coming in at this branch. Can you please take care of him? He's got, he's a good friend of mine. He's good for it. He's going to deposit like 50 grand. Let's not hold it. Let's just let it free. And if you have any questions, feel free to call me. Thanks so much. And here, I'll also send an email. How hard would that be to do, Gary Coates? He's looking for his mute. Nobody knows when I'm going to call him. I get this big thing of people I can just pick.
Sorry, John.
That's okay.
I was in the middle of something else. Repeat your question.
So how hard would it be for me to take Robert's voice, which is distinct, by the way? Robert, his CEO, is from South Africa. He has a great South African accent. Yep. And I could clone it. I could call the Astoria branch manager as though I'm Robert and look like I'm coming from his cell phone. And then I could have it say, hey, I have a personal friend coming in to open an account. Can you please make sure that they're well taken care of? And please no holds. I think they're going to deposit a lot of money and they're going to pull some out.
Yeah, it's possible. We use Stickley on security, and Jim thoroughly scares the crap out of people every quarter with his phishing training. So I've got the staff fairly paranoid. So
but are they paranoid for a phone call with Robert's distinct South African accent coming from his cell phone?
Yeah, people trust as a general rule, and so and if they were in a hurry, distracted, whatever, it could realistically happen. I could see it.
And my point is, we are already there. I can already spoof the phone. I can create a voice. There's another company called 11 Labs where you can go and speak into it and even get a better version of your voice. I can easily send the spoof emails no matter what we do. And heck, I could even go a step further. And if they send an email back, if they reply, if I'm smart, I could make it look sort of like it's a reply coming back, because it might be sort of a different URL. It might be WANA FCU on Microsoft appfcu.com, which is a common pseudonym or a pseudo piece for people who run an Office 365, and people kind of get used to. Sometimes internal mail will come from that, so that can flop around a little bit. I guess my point is, I think we're going to have to talk more about our training. And here's my other point, and this is kind of where I always go. I am not that smart, and I have lots of people that will account for that. Many on this call who would be happy to raise their hand and say, "Yep, he's right." And if I can think of it, someone somewhere is either planning to do it or already doing it. We're just not high enough on the list yet to get hit. But there's a lots more in terms of, you could have call the news media and say, you could have, people call the news media and say, yeah, I lost my all my money from WANA. We had a weird situation like that at WANA not too long ago, where the local, it was MCU, where the local news media talked to some lady who said that she was losing all her money or something. It turned out there was nothing true about it. But, what if someone calls and impersonates someone and does it that much better? So, but my real fear is, we have a lot of trust in the cell phone system. We have a lot of trust in the voices we hear, and we have a lot of trust in, in our CEOs and our higher level management. And they've been attacking those folks for years. They go with LinkedIn. If you look, the vast majority of phishing mails that get sent go after a lot of the executives. One, they're the most high profile. Two, they're the easiest to get their emails and whatnot for. What if I voice cloned, your CEO's voice and called the board and said I quit? There's just a lot that I think is going to happen here soon. And I'm just curious as to, whether anybody's experienced anything like this. But I was really taken aback by what this poor principal went through for somebody. It wasn't, that guy maybe spent 10 minutes doing what he did, posted it on social media, grabbed a little bit of the voice. It took as long as it probably took me to make that HeyGen video. So,
and John, not everybody that heard about the original story heard the corrected story.
Okay.
So a lot, I predict that a lot of people will still have bad feelings toward this principal, because they didn't hear both stories. They didn't hear the correction of the record. So
that's a great point. Is no matter how much this guy tries to outrun this, because it was such a, it's kind of like that Richard Jewell guy from the Olympics.
I was just thinking of that. Yeah, I just knew he was guilty from the news, and
I remember you going on TV and saying that guy should be locked up. It was, because you're in Atlanta, right? So that makes sense,
right?
But yeah, so for those of you that don't know, Richard Jewell was a security guard at the, what was it, the 94,
96 Olympics, the Olympic Park, and there was a big concert going on, and he was the private security person who was a bit overzealous in a lot of stuff he did, but he found a bag and he started warning people, and then he was the person that the FBI fingered as the person that planted the bomb, but he didn't.
Yeah, and that came out, but he's never been able to outrun that for years. There's still people, there's still suspicion. He had aspirations to be a law enforcement officer, and that just was gone after that because law enforcement treated him so terribly. And it brings me to this point that, Scott, I think your firm is really well positioned to sort of speak about a little bit, which is so much of our business as Crayons relies on reputation and trust, right? So, if there was a social media platform with, let's say a mortgage officer from any one of the Crayons on this call, and somebody put out a fake video that said, yeah, we've been told that if they're if they're a minority, and by minority I don't mean kid, that we should just not accept their loan, or we take 10 points off of it or something. How would you recover from that? Even once you proved it wrong, and you're back to your point of what happens to what happens, because it has a long tail, right? Everybody remembers the thing, but nobody remembers the exoneration.
Right. So there's a lot of litigation. We have some clients that always seem to have something with their name associated with it. That stuff shows up, but a good Google search might show the stuff. So it's not enough just to correct the record. But you also described what I think of as kind of like mini crises. It's not like somebody came in and stole $300,000, from a certain branch, or through fraud. It's the ability for anybody to cause pain and suffering, without to your point, without a whole lot of effort. A few minutes and a couple of tools, and you could really mess with people, and it's terrible. There's not an easy fix, and there's not even a hard fix, really, to be honest with you. If something happened where there was a made-up video about your example around unfair lending practices, you'd probably have to go well beyond that incident to show that you're a good citizen of the community, that you abide by these practices. You might want to do some webinars and some educational events around the subject. You might want to be seen in areas you were accused of of hurting, but that may be a very big response to a very easy what would you call that, fraudulent act, or in some cases maybe done without a whole lot of thought. That's what's scary about it.
Yeah, and what makes it more scary is that this reminds me of, I always like to say that I'd love to have been in the room the first time a credit card was cloned at the board level of whatever company it was, because I can hear everybody, and okay, we can't trust these anymore, shut it down, we're done. They can clone them. And once that happened, there were probably a lot of folks that really kind of wanted to throw things out the window pretty quickly. But it seemed like it was such a high bar to clone a credit card back then. Like, to have the magnetic tape and the skills to read it and to know how it works. And now that's nothing, right? You can go on eBay and buy. In fact, that's why we moved to EMV, and you can even clone EMV pretty easily as well. Yet we haven't gotten rid of those tools because we've added step-up authentication. We've done other things to it. I guess sometimes I feel like the town hall is a good opportunity to sort of at least prime us for what I see coming, because it's coming so quickly. But there's also a long tail of regulatory things too. EMV is an example of that it was regulatory to try to prevent that. Often we are compelled into action by something that happens, like, for example, the Target hack really kind of pushed PCI into place, right? That was something that came from that loss and everything that happened there. So, what I see coming, what I hope will come, is that companies that provide these services, the low-hanging fruit, not people like me who can run them locally and do what I want to do, but the low-hanging fruit, will be forced to bake in some sort of digital identifier that can't be heard by humans, but could be picked up by a computer. So, and I have a theory about that, Scott. I was going to throw it out there. So let's say the regulation says, look, if you provide tools to create the likeness of an image, even if it's of yourself or anything like that, you must encode the stream with a watermark or some piece. And by the way, there's a technology for this, which I know Robert Goodyear is going to go start. I expect to watch his little pictures start bouncing up and down. But a blockchain technology makes sense for this because a blockchain is an immutable truth, right? It's an immutable truth that's spread across so many nodes that it makes it impenetrable. Did you know that the blockchain, not Bitcoin, but the blockchain itself, particularly Bitcoin's version of the blockchain, it's been since 2009, it's never been hacked. Now you may think, oh, it has. I've heard about people losing money. No, that's people who lost their wallet, ID from the Bitcoin channel. That's people that gave their ID to Mt. Gox or something like that and had it taken. That's people who, there's lots of ways you can scam and do criminal activities with Bitcoin, but the Bitcoin platform itself has been very resilient. So what I'm picturing in the future, Scott, if that is your real name, is regulation that basically says a couple of things. One, if you're going to duplicate or provide these services, you must encode it with something. And then we need to be able to have a way to determine that. We need to have something that can pick that up. And because there's two sides of that coin, and let me give you the other side. We are very close. And a ChatGPT 4.0, the one that just came out, really pushed me over the edge on this. To having, imagine that ChatGPT 4.0 that I've shown could use my voice instead of, Sky or Ember or Scarlett Johansson or whoever they picked for, But imagine that it could use my voice instead of the other voice. Then it could make calls to the credit union. It could be given all of the same information that I have in order to authenticate itself. And by the way, I want to live in a world where that's a reality. I like that idea. I like the idea of getting up in the morning and sending like 5 Johns on a mission to go do some stuff. The world has always built around the idea of getting faster and faster. What I don't want is anybody else sending 5 Johns out to do stuff, right? So that regulation should work both ways. I think that if you're going to have what I'll call a virtual clone or a virtual assistant, that the regulation that should have some standard way, and we have lots of standards for this, by the way. Over the years, we built standards into everything to help us, identify things. But I think the world that we want to live in is where you could register agency for one of these virtual folks or virtual clones, and then the bank or the credit union or the post office or whoever these things are dealing with would have a way to authenticate and know that they're talking to an approved version of John.
So you described something that fresh on my mind based on another conversation about how an industry problem is not solved by one means alone. In the case of the example you provided, it could be advocacy or government relations to say we need this timestamp or this watermark or whatever it's called in the audio to fix it. We need education through town halls like this and the other associations, maybe make sure we're all aware of this potential problem, and making it hard to do business with some of our members who can't easily come into a branch. And then technology. So we got advocacy, education, and technology. If we're all rowing in the same direction, we could probably take care of just about anything.
I agree, because we have the mechanisms already in place to help us with that. But I'll throw one other one out there that I think is really important to what you said. Disabled. So folks who are mobile, folks who are like this, can change the world for people that are blind. They've got tools now that describe pictures down to every detail. We did a lot of work on websites to make it work for folks who are vision impaired. And now it would be so easy. Not only that, but we could translate it into any language they want, right? So that thought of looking at the credit union space and what we're here to do, it does feel like that ADA and some of those things could also be overcome, particularly for folks that are mobile and have troubles getting into the branches. So I agree with you completely. And how does that stuff begin? Well, I know there's some rules. Like, for example, the European Union just came out with their rules, but those rules started 3.5 years ago. And you know what wasn't happening 3.5 years ago? Any of this. Like, the world has picked up and come so far so quick that I don't think it's possible, to take rules that were sort of thought of in that past time frame and try to apply them now. It's kind of like the old, you can't drive your horse and buggy on the road. Well, not a lot of us are worrying about that right now. EVs are the bigger issue at the moment, but I just thought that was fascinating. This thought process, because I don't want to, with good comes bad, right? So the capability of doing this also means that they can use it, right? But the idea that we could invest in something that would lead to regulatory, that would make this a useful technology for a lot of folks, I love that idea. And to your point, the advocacy, but we have to know it's coming. And I'm seeing this. I don't think I've ever seen anything in all my years moving this fast. I feel like the internet was moving okay. I feel like, blockchain took from 2009 to 2014, 15 before it became anything that was really, and even then it's jury's still out, although Bitcoin is way up right now, thanks to the ETF decisions. But all right, well, who wants to start the ball rolling with the petition? I figure Scott can put it out on our Facebook and we can all sign it. But does anybody else have any thoughts on that before we get to the rest of this here, before we move on?
So John, do you think the solution is that there'll be good AI that fights bad AI? And that'll spawn like a separate industry, or it's all part of the AI industry?
That I keep hearing that. You got to fight AI with AI. And let me speak to that for a minute. There's a problem with that. And the problem is that current AI that we would purchase off the shelf, that would come from our vendors, has so many guardrails built into it. If you ask it, my God, and we've been hearing about this over and over. Gemini and its DEI tendencies, right? If you ask it for a historical figure, it's likely going to make that historical figure not whatever ethnicity they were. It's likely going to be a minority because it's so concerned about that. Did you see the Google just recently? So they've been working on their, this is a pretty funny story, so I'll show it because it relates to what I'm going to talk about here. So Google, if anybody's been to Google lately, they do this thing now where they have at the top of it their version of search. So if I go, how many rocks should you eat a day? Now, just recently, you can see that it's gone right here. I'm not seeing the other piece, but I'll click on this link so you can see. So what happened was that at the top of the new Google search engine, there is an AI that tries to recommend for you rather than you clicking on a bunch of links. And here's an example. This person said, how many rocks should I eat a day? And this is Google's response, legit response. Geologists recommend eating at least one small rock per day because many do not like the taste or texture of rocks. We recommend hiding the loose rocks inside of different foods like peanut butter or ice cream. So that's one example. Another example is spicy, or somebody asked something along the lines of, can I cook spaghetti faster using gasoline? And the answer was from Google, and they probably got this drilled in now, was basically it said, no, but you could make the recipe way spicy, and it advocated for including gasoline in the tomato sauce, which was pretty nuts. And there's pictures of this here. I think this is it. So there's been lots of, at least it said that, no, you can't use it to cook it faster, but you could use it to make a really spicy dish. And so getting back to your point, all of these AIs are continually getting more and more guardrails. Like someone somewhere has been tasked with making sure that Google doesn't tell you to eat a small rock a day. And the unintended consequences of whatever guardrail they put in place to keep it from telling you to not to eat rocks a day, we don't know yet. And there's a reason for that, because an LLM, these big models are kind of like, here's how they work. You got all this data. You can think of it as your substrate or your soil, and you just got it there. And then you've got this program, and you can think of it as a trellis. You stick the trellis in the soil. And then you're going to go in and you're going to stick in, your program kind of as the seeds, and you're going to let it go. You walk away from it. And for those of you that have done any gardening, you can't predict how it's going to climb up that trellis. You got no clue. It's where the curls, what parts it'll attach to. It just does what it does. That's our understanding today of how it works. Now, recently, Anthropic, the makers of Claude, came out and basically discovered that they figured out how its brain works, which is a lot like ours. We had this notion that it was kind of very much database, like if you open the box, there'd be 1,000 green lights, and one of those green lights would be Scott Mills, and if you ask the question about Scott Mills, that green light should light up. But that's not how it works. It actually works more like our brains, that it's got sort of quadrants and areas that are related to certain things. But they were able to isolate the Golden Gate Bridge. And what they did was they did an experiment, and they wanted to see if they could tweak that to the point where that AI would, what it would do, how it would respond if you gave, and it's not like you're telling it that the Golden Gate is important. What you're doing is you're making it think about the Golden Gate no matter what you do. So let's look at some images from Golden Gate Claude. So they put this out for everybody to use. And lots of people could go in and ask questions, and anything you asked it about, no matter what, it would work in the Golden Gate Bridge. If you ask it about, like, where's a great place to eat in San Francisco, it would tell you right in the middle of the Golden Gate Bridge. But first, you want to stop by this restaurant. And if you asked it to make a cake, it would tell you how to make a cake, but the best place that you could eat that cake, and then take a walk on the beach. So by tweaking this parameter that they finally discovered, which we didn't know where it was, they made it as though Claude was always having intrusive thoughts about the Golden Gate Bridge, and every single thing it said, no matter what it was, always included some reference to the Golden Gate Bridge. And I'll put this article in here for those of you who haven't seen it. What's interesting about this is, okay, back to my original premise. If they can do it, can I do it? Can I make it think about Hitler? Every time you ask it a question, it'll let you know who makes a great cake? Adolf J. Hitler. If you haven't had one of his cakes, they're amazing. They're from Austria. They're called Sockerton. That's the kind of thing that we have to think about. So getting back to your question about AI fighting AI. Our AI is going to have one hand tied behind its back, and their AI is going to be loose to do anything it wants to do. And we're going to have to figure that out, because our problem is the AI that we want to have fight it, if we turn it loose, we can't be sure it won't turn on us. Long way to go around to it, but that's where my thought is. I've been thinking a lot about that question. So, all right, well, let's get rolling. It's time to give away something. So I'm going to hand it over to the ladies. And for those of you who have more questions about that, oh yeah, bond companies, yeah, insurance. If you can't insure it, it doesn't exist. I learned that a long time ago. So yeah, there's a lot that's going to happen with this. It's very interesting. Ooh, it's the wheel. I love the wheel. Where's the music? I thought we had music for this. All right. Is everybody's name in? If your name isn't in, go ahead and put it in now. If you want to throw it in and you don't see your name on the list there and we missed it, please right now put it in the chat so we can stick it in there. And if all goes well, we should see somebody win a $99 Spotify certificate or a gift card. And don't get me started on gift cards. It's a whole nother thing. Which, by the way, what's the difference? No, I'm not even going there. Buy now, pay later, credit cards. So much to get my mind around. All right, I don't see anybody else. I say we run with it.
All right, here we go.
I'll press the button. Here we go.
Oh,
Yep,
he's pressing the button.
I pressed it. There
Ah!
we go.
He did it. Oh, Melissa. All right.
All right, woohoo!
Congratulations. All right. Well, thanks for listening to me rant. I'm just every day I see something and it's just something else that I go, oh my gosh, how are we going to contend with this? And I'm not trying to shoot this technology down. I'm just like Scott said, these are the forums where we got to get together and start thinking about these things and how we're going to work on them as a group. Thanks for scaring us once again. Yeah, I'm going to leave and go get some therapy. So that's what we should give away in the next one is a BetterHelp gift certificate for that site that does therapy. That'll be our next giveaway. So after you listen to me, you can go and talk to a therapist. I'm like, John said, and be like, no, it's going to be okay. He's crazy. I talked to him too. Congratulations, Melissa from Blue Eagle. And yes, everybody eat one small rock. Just make sure it's a small one. I think, just like Google says, you should look up the rest of those. There's like 3 or 4 more, and they are hilarious. So check it out. Very, very interesting. And I think they took it down for a little. By the way, ChatGPT went down yesterday for like 3 hours too. So, and I just had to quit. I had to leave. It was over for me. I no longer had a friend to talk to, and it was just done. Thanks, everyone. Big does not endorse nor recommend eating any rocks, except for the small ones. Just the small, tiny pebbles. Those should be okay. Isn't grape nuts just a form of rock? Honestly. All right, everybody. Thank you for your time.